2 weeks ago, I began reviewing this series and I thought it was pretty good. Then in my second review, I saw enough to call it great. But now, after stepping into season 2, I realized Jujutsu Kaisen isn't just great, but has become something truly special. The hype surrounding the series, not only is it deserved, it's been long overdue, at least from critics like myself. But more than earning my praise, this story has done something no other series ever has in the history of this YouTube channel. It's forced me to review something for a second time, and through doing so has proven my first impression entirely incorrect. That sobering realization that hit me as I watched this week's material, it surprised me like few others have in my career. But now, as I'm piecing together this video, reforming my new, more thorough opinion, I'm no longer surprised. Because when it comes to art, the true greats don't just follow the rules, they burn the rulebook in your face, and from the ashes create something truly generation-defining. I'm Totally Not Mark, and this is why I make videos. This is my first time watching, reacting to, and reviewing Studio Mappa's 2023 standard bearer and Gege Akutami's modern trendsetter. This is the unquestionably remarkable Jujutsu Kaisen, Season 2.
今でも青が澄んでいる今でも青は澄んでいるどんな色にも言葉も
The year is 2006, which means for the purposes of this video, I'm 15 years old again. Hooray! Complete with flip phone, retro tech, and even some references I understand.
It would be fine if he digivolved into Metal Greymon, but we can't have him turning into Skull Greymon.
Life is good being a teenager once again, or at least that's what I would be saying if this was just another standard anime flashback. And while I didn't know it yet, as soon as I'd hit play, I had set in motion a story bookended by death and rebirth. A multi-part reflection that would completely reframe my understanding of Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole, and it all began with a voice, familiar yet foreboding, guiding us into the unknown.
Exercise. Absorb. Over and over.
Suguru Geto. That familiar darkness eventually gives way to an unfamiliar story that ties up every lingering question and uncertain motivation I had from season 1. And to achieve that, something big had to be revealed. Something that once seemed inconceivable. The reality that once upon a time, the terrifying main antagonist of this story, Geto, was once the classmate of none other than... What I find just so perfect about this story and its setup is how natural and light it feels, even during some of its heaviest moments, thanks in no small part to the chemistry and dynamic established between these two rivals, friends, and students. But with this friendliness comes the promise for tremendous retroactive context. Oh, also, this conversation, first of all, Geto and Gojo are dicking around playing basketball, but that's not even the wildest part. The wild part is who they are at this formative point in their young lives. You see, flashbacks in anime are a common but powerful narrative tool used to retroactively shed light on a key moment leading up to a climax. In the worst of cases, this profoundly useful tool is relegated to little more than a narrative crutch, a mechanism to tie up thoughtless loose ends in the name of sticking the landing, so to speak. They never do. But sometimes there are special stories, and with Jujutsu Kaisen's second season, this cold open isn't supplementing or even serving to set up this story's climax. It is the story. Every conflict, every motivation, every ideological clash these characters will ever face, it all stems from this one pivotal event we have yet to even witness, and right away, the dynamic is set. Geto is calm, reasonable, and deeply principled. He speaks of strength as a responsibility. The strong exist to protect the weak. He sounds like Yuji. And what does Gojo think of Geto's moral stance?
Assigning reasons and responsibility to strength is what those who are weak tend to do.
Legitimately, when I heard Gojo say this, I immediately thought back to every moment from season 1 where he was awesome as fuck, but maybe a little scary, but mostly awesome as fuck. But then I remembered he's 16 and all 16-year-olds suck. But not me, I'm 15, so I got a good year in me before I turn into a prick. Jokes aside, this argument between Gojo and Geto isn't just some philosophical flavor text, it's everything. If you recall, in my last video, I explained that no matter what a scene might look like, whether it be a couple arguing or two Saiyans duking it out, a story is rarely ever about what's on the surface. A great antagonist isn't just a person, they're an idea. A great hero, they're a symbol, a virtue. This is all to say that while this argument between Gojo and Geto isn't presented as flashy or ostentatious, the philosophy of this exchange forms the bedrock not just of this scene, this episode, or even this flashback, but indeed the entire central conflict of Jujutsu Kaisen as a series so far. But here's where it gets brilliant, because Akutami doesn't make it easy for us. Instead of the hero representing virtue and the villain embodying the poison, Akutami flips the script. He gives the soon-to-be main villain Geto the noble belief, and the established hero Gojo the dangerous one. And so through dramatic irony, we all know where this story ultimately leads us to, but what we don't know is how and why the pieces fall the way that they eventually do.
You scum! If you think that you're gonna kill me, you better be ready to die first!
This is Riko Amanai. She's loud, energetic, and most importantly, she represents the moral abyss at the heart of this story. Here's the mission. Sacrifice this young, weak girl so that the strong, Tengen, may continue to survive and protect the world. It is horrifying, it's gut-wrenching, and for Gojo and Geto, two kids wielding absurd levels of power and, therefore, responsibility, it forces upon them the central and unavoidable dilemma: does strength exist to serve the weak, or do the weak exist to fuel the strong? And if somehow all of that philosophical tomfoolery wasn't tickling your pickle enough, we're introduced to the second organization after Riko's life, an organization that's hired the services of...
How's Megumi doing?
Who's Megumi?
This is Megumi's dad. I know, shit's fucked. It's a real boy named Sue type situation, and if you're one of the 3 people out there that understood that reference, I salute you, good sir. What makes the part he plays in the second act so compelling is how relatively inactive he is. I mean, the guy's oozing with main character energy. There's no way someone with that name, that aura, and that character design, frankly, isn't putting boots to asses real soon. And yet, most of the scenes he's in, he just vibes. And if I'm being completely honest, something about that always seemed off to me. For instance, at the close of episode 2, Riko is successfully saved from harm, but Kuroi, the only kind of family she has left, is kidnapped, with the concluding note being a pact made between Gojo, Geto, and Riko to save her at all costs. And then, just when you think the story is about to launch into a cerebral hostage situation...
I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
This was so jarring to me. For the first few minutes, I legitimately thought we were in some sort of illusion. But instead, it serves as maybe the third or, I don't know, fourth instant where Gojo and Geto totally subvert the drama by being more powerful than anyone could possibly be prepared for. And even in this unexpected, idyllic setting, the ugly moral question sitting at the heart of the story remained very much the focus. For all of Gojo's bravado at the start of this arc, his dismissal of morality, his unwavering belief in power as an absolute, his actions here betray a different truth. Because here he is doing everything in his power not to dominate, but to prolong. Not to conquer, but instead to protect. Capable of bending reality to his will, and yet here he is going to great lengths to bend his own rules in order to give this girl a few more days of freedom. At the start of the story, Gojo stood as a childish pillar next to the far more mature and considerate Geto, an unserious force of nature that would scoff at the weak and dismiss responsibility as something beneath him. But now, after losing days of sleep and after burning through untold amounts of his own energy for the sake of this child, flanked by his closest ally and this innocent life, he crosses the threshold of Jujutsu High, no longer a godlike child, but very much a virtuous man. For all his power, for all his invincibility, it seems not even God himself can stay awake forever. And also, holy shit!
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
I'm not going to mince words here. This is cinema. This is narrative poetry at its finest. When crafting a positive change arc like the one Gojo is experiencing right now, there's a natural temptation to reward the character's growth, to reinforce their progress with victory and validation. But if you do that too soon, you don't just undercut the tension, you run the risk of draining the story of its meaning entirely. It sounds counterintuitive, but the most crucial part of a positive change arc isn't the moment the character takes a step forward, but rather the moment they get knocked backwards. Towards the end of an arc, after a character has been rewarded for their growth, the story must then confront them with every reason they originally refused to change. Take Dragon Ball Z's Vegeta, for example. His entire philosophy was built upon the belief that compassion equals weakness. Lower your guard and you'll fall behind. And for years, that belief held up. Until the Buu saga. Now softened by time and family, Vegeta is suddenly forced to face a terrifying truth. By letting go of his ruthless, single-minded pursuit, he's fallen behind Goku, and for a moment, he rejects this growth. Because what if everything he sacrificed was for nothing? It's only when he comes to that realization, when he chooses his new path despite the pain of change, does his arc solidify. That's the essence of a great transformation. A character isn't just tested before they change, they're tested after, when they have the most to lose. And that's precisely where Gojo finds himself right now, finding his feet against this distant memory, Toji Fushiguro, an entity that recognizes him not just in passing, but as the first individual to ever perceive him before he was ready. With that gaze Gojo levied upon him that cut through his once imperceptible movements, it revealed a chink in this young assassin's armor, and through doing so, left him with an undeniably terrifying scar to reckon with. This is precisely why Toji took this incredibly detailed approach. Everything, the distractions, the diversions, the weapons he used, and even the jarring gag framing of Kuroi's kidnapping was all intentional. A grand plan executed to perfection, designed to achieve one end: to make this god bleed human blood. And it worked! What a story! Feeding the piercing reminder of this burden on his chest, his own blood spilling for perhaps the first time, Gojo doesn't panic. He doesn't even rage. He simply acts by instructing Geto to take Riko and run, to get her deeper into the confines of Jujutsu High so that she may define her own destiny, all the while he must bear the brunt of the choices he's made in the form of the most calculated and formidable enemy he's ever encountered. Gojo's dead? All this talk I had about change arcs, about the trials that define transformation, and Akutami just kills the guy? Okay, wait, never mind. Look, Riko finally confessing that she...
I am dead inside.
Geto versus Toji. Okay, look, I just can't with this episode. You see that face Geto's making? That's real. That's me right now. Forget this being a narrative choice that forces us to relate to Geto, the soon-to-be actual psychopath. I feel like we're in therapy together. My brother in trust. You see that dick cheese over there? Stick your spirited away dragon thing on him. Eat his fucking face. Geto walks into this fight not just as a jujutsu sorcerer, but as a firm believer in the system that has governed his entire life. To him, sorcerers protect the weak and the strong uphold order. Toji's very existence shatters that belief. Here stands a man with no cursed energy, an anomaly who, by all logic, should not be able to touch him, and yet he does more than that. He annihilates him. It's bad enough he's beaten, but Toji leaves him alive and mocks him for it. He says, "You were all beaten by a monkey like me who can't even use curse techniques." I don't think I need to point out here the word that wormed its way into Geto's vocabulary from here on in. This isn't just a battle, it's the first great undoing of Geto's worldview. Toji doesn't just beat Geto physically, he dismantles him psychologically. The system Geto has trusted, the rules that have dictated his entire existence, mean nothing in the face of raw, unorthodox power.
Hey there. It's been a while, huh?
If Geto's battle was about the dismantling of a worldview, Gojo's is about the birth of a brand new one. Gojo's world. Death forced evolution in a sense. Where round one depicted a profoundly arrogant Gojo, one that believed himself untouchable, that strength alone is enough to protect, and that his mere presence is a deterrent, his death and revival here marks the birth of the strongest. And with it, a new philosophy, one that sets Gojo down a path of frightening confidence and unbearable responsibility. The moment he returns, reversing death itself, Gojo declares, and I quote, "I am alone, the honored one. This isn't just a flex, mind you. This is a revelation. Gojo was always strong, but now he understands what that truly means. Power is not just a tool for protection, it is the sole determining factor of reality. The weak may have ideals, beliefs, and rules, but the strong dictate what is real. This is the core rift between him and Geto now. Where Geto is losing faith in the system, Gojo is realizing that he can exist beyond it. Toji, for all his brilliance, recognizes this. Maybe he sees the same terrifying gaze from his past, the gaze of the clan that cast him aside or the child that looked down on him. Maybe he knows there is no escaping what's coming. And so, he charges forward anyway, not to survive, but to ensure his son's future. In his final moments, he doesn't think of vengeance, he doesn't think of himself. His last words are of Megumi. With this harrowing moment coming to a close, the responsibility and burden of Gojo's newfound strength is solidified. This is the moment he becomes the strongest sorcerer. With his arrogance shattered, his vulnerabilities exposed, and his evolution complete, Gojo fights not with the carefree attitude he once had before, but with the knowledge that being the strongest means being responsible for shaping the entire planet. This is everything Gojo becomes in Jujutsu Kaisen moving forward. This shot, it gave me chills. Geto stands before a crowd of human-shaped monsters cloaked in soft blue light, and behind him stands Gojo, lingering in the hallway, bathed in an angry, vengeful red. These aren't just aesthetic choices, they represent the core dilemma of this story: to kill the weak or protect them. Gojo, with his newfound power, is ready to slaughter every last person in that room. The only thing stopping him is the same guiding hand that's always been at the wheel. Geto utters, "There's no point," but Gojo responds, "Does there really need to be?" To which Geto, still holding on to his ideals, replies, "It's very important that there is." This is the foundational fulcrum of this entire arc. At this moment, Gojo has been reborn with fresh resolve, all the while Geto is forced to live on in a world he's slowly losing faith in. This is where the true horror of this story sets in. Not just loss, not just failure, but the realization that those he fights for don't even want his protection. That the weak whom he and Gojo have risked everything to save can not only be indifferent, but can relish in the atrocity of it all. This moment is the second crack in his resolve. 1 year later. That mission 1 year ago, which brought them closer together than they ever have been, has now resulted in a chasm forming between the two, physically, technically, and even emotionally. Unlike Gojo, Geto didn't walk away from this past year with a positive lesson or something to grow from. Instead, he presents as a shadow of his former glory. Hair unkempt, his body withering from stress, his eyes heavy from countless nights, now shouldering even more work alone due to the strength Gojo has now attained. In desperation, he asks himself,
Who am I doing this for?
Then enter Yuki, a sorcerer unlike the others, having abandoned the conventional jujutsu system to pursue a personal philosophy, that being one in which cursed spirits are eliminated without the need for endless exorcism. She becomes another potential path for Geto. Her solution to the cycle of suffering is fundamental rather than reactive, and her alternate way of thinking accidentally triggers the last push Geto needed. She presents him two options: eliminate all cursed energy or teach all humanity to control it. But there is a harrowing third option, one that is lurking beneath the surface of Geto's warping mind. In much the same way Gojo has been given an almost divine resurgence of newfound purpose and energy in pushing towards this new world he's trying to create, a light returns to Geto's eyes.
Or you could solve the problem by killing all non-sorcerers.
This is the natural conclusion of his spiraling ideology, and it's one that Yuki herself rejects, content to find a better answer into the future. Alas, though, it is too late for Geto. The seeds have started to grow. Sorcerers exist to protect the weak. If the weak do not appreciate sorcerers, then why should sorcerers protect them? Sorcerers should rule over non-sorcerers. Each time he flirts with this thought, the sound of applause echoes in his mind. That moment, Gojo, bathed in red, standing over Riko's corpse, whispering to him, urging him to compromise on his ideals. Then, the final insult. Yuki tells him a replacement for Riko has been found, a horrifying reminder that the world simply just moves on, that nothing truly changes, and as Geto's disillusionment grows, so too does the blood staining his memories. That hallway of blue light, it's turning red. Until finally, he hits his breaking point. The death of a comrade on a harrowing mission, one that completely and utterly solidifies his belief that humanity should not exist. Children in a cage, wrongly blamed by non-sorcerers for a curse's actions. As Yuki's options echo through his mind, a symbolic candle is snuffed out, and with it goes the Suguru Geto we once knew. The horrifying option has been cemented, and with it, an entire village is massacred.
Suguru's old home was already an empty husk as well. Though from the bloodstains and residuals, he most likely killed his parents.
Like hell he did!
While Gojo is struggling to come to terms with the path Geto has chosen, it's the way Geto presents himself now that I found most fascinating. He's healthier, happier, brighter even. The burden of indecision is now gone. Now fully committed, he desires a world of only Jujutsu sorcerers. When Gojo arrives, Geto remains calm, unshaken, resigned. He delivers a heartbreaking request: say something, anything. In spite of everything, Gojo just wants to understand why. He's desperate for there to be some kind of logical reason that shows there's something left of his best friend. But alas, all he's met with are a series of devastating reaffirmations of his troubling beliefs and an accusation of arrogance and one question.
Do you think you're the strongest because you're Satoru Gojo? Or are you Satoru Gojo because you're the strongest?
For as heartbreaking of a scene as this is, I love this question. Is this identity and purpose defined by his overwhelming power, or does his strength stem from his convictions and choices? It's a question left unanswered, but one that seems to linger in Gojo throughout the series. Does he matter beyond being the strongest, and if so, why couldn't his strength save Geto from this path?
If you want to kill me, then kill me. There would be a point to that.
With every reason to pull the trigger, Gojo can't. The same flaw that crippled Geto all those months ago, compassion, has now chained Gojo to his own powerlessness. This moment haunts both characters for the rest of their lives. For Gojo, it becomes one of his biggest regrets, a moment that shapes how he views his own strength, and for Geto, it's the last time he truly acknowledges their friendship before fully committing to this new path. In the end, this isn't just the last conversation between two friends, it is the birth of two opposing legacies. And it's Gojo who seeks to carve out a new path.
Trying to get strong. Strong enough to keep up with me.
And with that, a solitary line from season 1 now carries with it a devastating new meaning. Gojo isn't just assembling allies, he's ensuring that this next generation has the strength of character not to fall as his friend once did. Maybe the cycle of corruption can be broken by sheer force. Maybe it requires careful, deliberate change. Maybe if Gojo plays his cards right, this next generation will be strong enough to do what he couldn't. Maybe they will find the means to end this cycle. In the intro for this video, I mentioned that this series has forced me to do something I've never done before on this channel, and that's make a review for one story twice. You see, a couple of years ago, myself and my team dipped our toes into the world of Jujutsu Kaisen through this film, and it didn't go well. In fact, you could say the film left me so underwhelmed that it alone played the key role in me putting off Jujutsu Kaisen for as long as I did. But in a way, I'm kind of glad, because after covering the entire series up until season 2, episode 5, my impression of this film hasn't just improved, it's completely flipped. I loved it. However, the most interesting thing about Jujutsu Kaisen 0 is that despite my newfound adoration for it as an essential part of the story, is that I actually stand behind my initial criticism. Because as an entry point to this series, it dramatically underserves the depth it's trying to achieve. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, hold on, Jujutsu Kaisen 0 came out between seasons 1 and 2. Of course it's a bad entry point. But if you're not aware, the movie is actually an adaptation of the very first chapters of the Jujutsu Kaisen series. It does, in fact, officially come first. Now, that's not to say that in general, beginning with a more self-contained story and then transitioning into the main series is an inherently bad idea. There are countless examples of prelude films or smaller stories setting up grander narratives to great effect. So the problem here isn't the concept, it's the execution. You see, Jujutsu Kaisen 0 attempts to weave intriguing reveals and retrospective payoffs, but I'm not convinced the trade-offs for that are worth it.
You're late again, as usual. Satoru.
One of, and perhaps the only benefit of watching this film prior to season 1 comes in the form of this exchange between Geto and Gojo comprising the film's ending. Following a tense and emotional battle, Geto, now on the verge of death, is seen attempting to make a hasty retreat before suddenly coming face to face with Gojo. Some words are exchanged, and then the film cuts away from Geto for the very last time. As an audience, we're left to speculate as to the choice Gojo makes here. Did he sit with his one-time friend in his final moments? There's a slashing sound heard off-screen, so did he just put him out of his misery? Or did something else occur? This is a great question and offers the preceding season's opportunity to pay off different elements of it. Season 1 gets to enjoy a surprise return from Geto, complete with forehead scar, and Season 2's hidden infantry with its broader context grants the film a surge of retroactive depth. This framework is terrific and common, seen all over stories like One Piece, where a story might kick off rather plainly only for that beginning to gain a greater significance as the story unravels. But where arcs like those found in One Piece differ is that they don't place the same burden for drama and complexity that Jujutsu Kaisen 0 places on itself. You see, the story of Jujutsu Kaisen 0 so desperately tries to inform the audience about characters like Gojo, Maki, and Geto, all of whom's credibility, if this is your entry point to the series, exclusively rely on our understanding and appreciation for their individual stories. But if all of that complexity, and it is complex and deep and emotional and all the rest of it, if all of that is crammed into a single film, your best case scenario is that they're going to feel half-baked and melodramatic. They're like, hi, I'm Maki. Here's my tragic backstory. Horror. Hey, I'm Gojo. I'm going to spend the entire film alluding to a complicated relationship, only for us not to really ever see it. Hey, I'm Geto, and I hate monkeys because, I don't know, I'm fucking weird. I'm a fan of Frieza, I don't know. Conversely, Luffy's adventures around the East Blue offer plenty of moments that imply deeper meaning without getting too bogged down in absurd levels of detail. And this works because the whole point of taking this slow approach is to allow space for later chapters and arcs to grant those early scenes the retroactive gravitas they deserve. So the answer therefore, you might be thinking, is just don't watch it first. Watch it after season 1, right? Well, there's actually a compelling argument also to be made that even watching this movie when it was released was an equally ill-advised idea. For while we do gain a deeper understanding of characters like Maki following season 1, we still don't understand Gojo's relationship with Geto, either of their backstories, despite it arguably being the most important element of this story substance, and on top of that, also lose the surprise return of Geto during season 1. So, in the end, neither of the two official placements before or after season 1 hit the mark for me. But slotting in right after hidden inventory in season 2, while not a 100% perfect fit free of consequence, I believe that could be the most optimal solution. However, while much of this story is made or broken based on your level of insight, there are elements of this tale that work surprisingly okay in a vacuum. Yuta. Yuta's introduction and subsequent flashbacks are emotionally framed and staggeringly well written. I particularly love how clever and subversive Yuta's introduction to us is, with the first line of the screenplay straight up telling us what sort of character he is. Now, after experiencing how well Junpei's character was shown to us in season 1 as being a weak and vulnerable individual, this seemingly lazy approach the film took to tell us what Yuta is left me immediately concerned for what was to come. But then the twist came. This wasn't a case of telling instead of showing, this was intentional misdirection. Yuta, you see, isn't weak. He's the exact opposite thanks to Rika. Within moments, we understand. Yuta's a terrified kid that considers himself a danger to society, one who, with each passing day, is struggling to come up with a reason why he deserves to see another tomorrow. So that's another success for pre-season 1 JJK 0, technically, right? Well, yes, but even Yuta, the most centrally developed character within the confines of this film's runtime, still benefits greatly from the additional context of the wider story.
I wish I could be just like you.
No amount of flashbacks within the confines of this film can serve as a sufficient replacement for the journey we've all accompanied Maki on throughout season 1. When I first watched this scene years ago, I genuinely felt nothing. I could see why something like this would mean a great deal to someone like Maki, but that was about it. I understood, but I didn't feel anything. This time, though, was different. I knew Maki. I related to her, and due to that, I teared up. But enough about Maki, right? This isn't her story. It's time to talk about Yuta, Geto, and how Hidden Infantry elevates this film far beyond what it could ever hope to achieve on its own. Jujutsu Kaisen Zero's integration of Yuta into Jujutsu High is dramatic, but it takes on a totally different atmosphere when set alongside Yuji's introduction. Where Yuji was empowered and optimistic when he met Gojo, by the time Yuta did the same, he was very visibly at his wit's end, disheveled, exhausted, and on a razor's edge. And now, armed with important context from Season 2, it's not a leap to think that Gojo saw an all too familiar face of despair from his past staring back at him. In the same way Episode 5 visually communicated Geto's unraveling, this film makes a point of illustrating the same for Yuta.
You better watch that mouth of yours, because I don't need any monkeys like you in the world that I'm creating.
The decision to center the story's climax around Geto and Yuta was, I think, a very intelligent one. For newcomers lacking prior context, this is a clash between virtuous uncertainty and poisonous conviction. A young man pulled back from the brink, once incapable of controlling his powers, now finds steady footing standing up for those he loves in the face of pure terror. While those with a more detailed understanding of both characters' backstories can appreciate it as a clash between a young man Gojo successfully saved and another he couldn't. With each of these characters' respective fates seemingly tied to their own ability to see a future for themselves worth living, something that's defined Yuta's entire journey with Rika. It was thought that for the longest time, what stood between Yuta and the happiness he yearned for was Rika Orimoto. But now, with Geto's plan to kill Yuta and absorb Rika revealed, an all too important switch suddenly flips. For his entire life, Yuta always believed that he was the danger he needed to protect the world from. But here he is staring down the black hole that is Geto. And through doing so, this twisted individual has removed that concern. He's made the situation easy. Now all that stands between Yuta's friends and certain death is Rika. And all that stands between Rika and absorption is Yuta. They are depending on each other now. In the end, perhaps ironically, Suguru Geto offers Yuta the conditions necessary to connect the final dots in his mind, resulting in greater focus, confidence, and ultimately the reconciliation of his greatest demon, himself. Armed with the context of Season 1 and Season 2's Hidden Infantry, this story transforms into a deep and emotional tale detailing the transcendent nature of love, friendship, and acceptance in the face of hopelessness. For the uninitiated, Yuta's story clearly contends with these themes. Through accepting and loving Rika for what she is, he finds salvation. However, for those of us who are familiar with this story a little bit more, it's in that final scene between Gojo and Geto that we also discover not so obvious allusions to the very same through lines. At 16 years of age, Gojo was an arrogant prick, but Geto never gave up on him, and in the most harrowing of circumstances within his young life, acted as his North Star, a consistent and steady guiding hand when he was walking a razor's edge himself. At age 17, Gojo realizes his once reliable North Star has fallen from view, and soon after, when confronted by what Geto had become, was incapable of pulling the trigger, choosing instead to dedicate his life to another mission, fostering and protecting those that need him. And at age 28, when the responsibility of ending Geto's life is mercifully taken from him, and all that he needed to do was passively observe the inevitable brought on by his own hubris, it seems even then, Gojo couldn't bear it. In the same way Gojo now goes to great lengths to offer those like Megumi, Yuji, and Yuta a steady guiding hand in the face of a world determined to see each of them snuffed out, he can't bring himself to deny that same warmth to the one man who saved him when no one else cared to or could. So the only question left right now is, where do things go from here? The worst kept secret in the online anime community has to be that Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen is crazy good. And so far, that's pretty true. But what that normally means in the context of the general anime fandom is major plot beats are resolved and or notable characters meet their end in some capacity. Given that we are quickly approaching Geto's fabled October 31st deadline, my guess is that this is going to be a real war, not entirely dissimilar to that which he informed Gojo December 24th was going to be in this film. film. In saying that, I do not think Yuta, Yuji, Megumi, or Maki are going to die. I think their continuation is somewhat important to the themes of this story at hand, so yeah, I'm giving them good odds. However, for characters like Nobara, Todo, and especially characters like Mai, I think they could conceivably be on the chopping block. Mai, in my opinion, is the most likely as she holds great significance to Maki and her story. Her death could offer the perfect stage whereby she could forgive and then cheer on her sister as she pushes towards her goals. Now, it pains me to say this, but there's also a chance that the world's greatest bromance could be on the rocks very soon. Love stories tend to end in tragedy and loss, that's all I'm saying. Todo's a very likable character that presents a tremendous issue for those he faces, so I can't imagine a noble sacrifice for his BFF is out of the question. And Nobara, well, she's sort of like Shoko to Megumi and Yuji's Gojo and Geto. She's fun, she's compelling, and her story with Sayori could find more familiar footing before the end of the season, but there's still a chance that she could get snuffed out here too. And then finally, there's Geto. I don't think he's making it out of this arc the same way he enters, whether that be changed forever or dead. Heck, maybe he could both be changed and die. If there's any chance that it will happen, it will be at the hands of Satoru Gojo at the end of whatever this big story is. With this occasion being the third and final time these two meet, I mean, as they say, third time's the charm. Well, of course, this is all just speculation. One thing I am certain on is that I am going to immediately watch more Jujutsu Kaisen as soon as I finish this script. If you want to see more coverage for Season 2 in the coming weeks, please make sure to like and subscribe. But until then, I've been Totally Not Mark, and I'll see you all next time when we dive deeper into Season 2 of Jujutsu Kaisen.
Hey Geto. The rest of Season 2 review is gonna be great for real for real. You can support the TNM on Patreon as well. Okay, bye. And don't forget to wash your hands before a meal.